Here's an interesting one for you. I think many of the ways that men in particular are pacifying themselves or dealing with stress and creating a pretty unhealthy addiction is with pornography. What is your take on the consequences of using pornography?
Man, it's probably the lowest vibration that you can engage in. Porn is the worst thing you could ever mess with. I was very lucky. I don't know how old you are. I'm
33.
Okay, I'm 40. So the internet was around, but nobody was using it when I was younger. Thank goodness. I think I was very lucky that I was in that space where I didn't have access to high-speed internet. You know, I had dial up, and my parents didn't even have a computer. So I didn't even get my first cell phone until I think I was like 19 or 20, and it was a flip phone. It was like A, B, C. Yeah. So like there was no screens or nobody was logging on stuff. So porn wasn't accessible. So one, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that it wasn't in my field. It wasn't in my surroundings. It wasn't in my childhood experience. Thank goodness, you know, because that really messes people up. I mean, I have friends around your age, a little bit younger, and the first time they masturbated was to fucking porn.
Yeah, right.
Which is wild, as opposed to this innocent exploration experience.
Yeah, you kind of like, what just happened?
That's how it was for me. I was like, what just happened? I was like, this is amazing. And I was like, just my kid self up in my room. I didn't even know what happened. And that's the way it's supposed to be, this beautiful innocence exploration, and to have a number of kids that are exposed to pornography and that's their first experience is really rough. And, you know, I never really got into porn. I did dabble in it here and there. But once I became aware of the industry and where it was coming from, and once I learned that, man, I would say 90% or more of the people that were engaged in porn were coming from trafficking, women and children that were trafficked. And that alone was like, that's the darkest stuff that you can get into. And that was the easiest thing ever to be like, oh, never again, like just absolutely never again. And once you kind of work in the realms of energy, you know, and once you really realize that everything is everything and everything is a spectrum of this profound energy, there's a low energy and a high energy, and this stuff is as low as it gets. And not to mention what it really does to the brain. Like I've had friends who were essentially porn addicts where, you know, they got into it so much, you know, regular lovemaking with their partner became boring. Not even boring. It's just like they couldn't get like to that stimulation anymore. So then their shit didn't work because it wasn't exciting enough. The drug wasn't hard enough. And so like, then they thought something was wrong. Then they felt more shame around it. They're engaging in porn even more. Then that porn they were watching, maybe it was just regular porn, whatever that is, you know, they were watching it. And then all of a sudden that's not good enough. And so they go to another drug. And so it's weirder porn. And then that's not good. And it goes to weirder porn and more weird porn. And before you know it, you're watching some weird, dark shit. You don't know if you're straight. You don't know if you're gay. You don't know any of these things. And it totally like just shuts off their entire world. They don't know how to communicate. And it's a full blown addiction. And it's dark stuff too. It's really, really dark stuff. It's some demonic shit. I wouldn't fuck with it.
Dude, it's crazy. And I think, yeah, I was lucky to escape childhood relatively. I think probably the first time I was exposed to porn, I was like 16. So a little more maturely developed, but still it doesn't come with any warning labels. No. It's not like the cigarette boxes with the nasty lungs on them. You don't see this. And, you know, you open Pandora's box, your little brain is developing, you're hijacked by this really excessive dopamine. I forget the name of the evolutionary psychologist, but she came up with this kind of tongue-in-cheek term of fapentropy, that basically what you start masturbating to will not be what you finish masturbating to. Like you said, it's going to get progressively, it needs to be more. The stimulus needs to be more. So if it's, you know, guy on girl, one-on-one, okay, that's might work for a little bit, but then it's got to be like 3, and then you're all the way into like crazy bukkake shit. And you're like, how did we end up here?
Yeah, you're watching some donkey stuff. It's like, what the fuck just happened? Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys deal with a lot of shame around that. A lot of adults right now are going to have issues with pornography, and there's shame and there's guilt, and it may be even manifesting in the relationships with the partners. And like a reminder here is like, you're not broken, you're not a bad person, you got hijacked by something. And maybe even potential things like awareness and breath work can be the solution to that too. Like if you feel the urge and this is your default to go into the bathroom and do what you're going to do, what if you took a walk? What if you did some breathing? What if you did some push-ups? What if you did anything else that's not that? And you only need to do it once, and now you've got a little bit of evidence that, okay, I can do this. And then once becomes twice, and twice becomes 10, and we can win these battles, you know?
Yeah, you know, I actually work with a lot of women. I work with a lot of women. I would say 70% of my clients are women. And, and I've worked with some women that have experienced some really traumatic experiences, whether it was through rape or molestation as children. And from that darkness that they experienced, they became very promiscuous, and they became porn addicts as well. And they also frequently would masturbate, like all through the day. And I work with a lot of women that are in this field, and that's the drug. And it's like that. And what's interesting is like, it's first making very clear that energy, even if you guys got that energy from porn as a young kid, it's not yours. It's a very unique type of energy that's being passed around, and so helping people realize, like, hey, whatever it is that you're feeling from this addiction or from this experience, it's not yours to begin with. And that's really powerful to be like, and like, how can we clean this body of this low vibration that you may have been consuming throughout these years, or what you experienced in that horrible experience. And the way that I'm able to help essentially these specific clients that I just mentioned work through it, it's funny, like they would hit me like, they're like, Justin, I have an urge right now. I have an urge to do this, and I'm just trying to figure out, and I already did the breath work and it didn't work. And I'm like, okay. And this is like, and we kind of mentioned this in the beginning, it's like, I go, did you sit with it yet? And she's like, no. And I'm like, all right, this is going to be really tough, but just get in a chair, put your hands down on the chair, and just sit with this feeling, sit with this emotion that's going to be released. It's going to be very heavy. It's going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to climb. You're going to feel like you're going to burst. Just sit with it, welcome it, let it consume you, feel all these things. And then after about 5-10 minutes, if you can make it that far, that's when you start adding those breaths, and then ask it to kindly leave. You're no longer needed. Like, I release you. And it works every time. It works every time. And these are people that come from really, really traumatic experiences. It's amazing to see them release this hold, this energy, this darkness that has been put on them, whether it's from an actual event or from things like, the internet pornography. But there's definitely ways to heal from this, and let it go and release it. But feeling it is the first step.
Yeah, it reminds me, I often think about the Harry Potter movies. It'll come full circle in a minute. They're so scared of Lord Voldemort that they won't even say his name, yeah. Right? So they can't even look at it. And it's like, reminds me of a child like sitting on the bed under the covers, terrified because they've convinced themselves there's a monster under the bed. And if you can guide them to go and look under the bed, they'll realize there's no monster there. So it's the act of looking at it. It's the act of being with it to take the power back over it. But people need that nudge. They need a safe space. They need a person to believe in them. Otherwise, that becomes too overwhelming that they either follow through, they do the action, or they turn to something else. They might even solve one problem and just create a new problem. So there's so much there. And I think that's a wonderful, like, reminder to, like, again, sit with the stuff that scares you the most. Like, you are stronger than you think. You're more capable than you know, and you're safe. Right? You are safe. It's just this story. It's your human, and that you can transcend that.
Hello, friends. If you enjoyed that clip, then you can watch the entire thing by heading to this link over here, or you can find us wherever you find podcasts by searching Radical Health Radio. If there's value here, please hit that like button. Let us know in a comment what your biggest takeaway was, and hit subscribe. Support the show as we support you. We'll see you soon.